episode 321 of Late Night Linux. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Howdy.
Graham.
Good evening.
And Will.
Hello.
A couple of episodes ago, we did some what-if questions, some counterfactuals, and people seemed to like them. So let's do some more of them. The first one. What if Linus Torvalds had not written Linux? What if he'd just not had the wild hair to write it and just written something completely different instead? Where would we be today?
I'm tempted to say that we'd have a world dominated by big proprietary software without anything like the open source story and dominance that we have now. I don't know if that's too cynical, but I remember when I graduated in the mid-90s, and that's all I really saw. It was so uninteresting and unexciting. I couldn't see that there'd be any alternative until I discovered Linux. And that seemed to be the future for me at that time. I remember thinking that way. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe somebody else would have come along and made a successful open source operating system. But it just seemed to be against all odds in the 90s.
I genuinely believe that somebody would have come along and done something similar. We had alternatives then, Minix and BSD. Somebody would have seen that project and been inspired to make their own thing, whatever it would be called. So I'm reasonably confident that, give it a couple of years, somebody else in a university somewhere would have come up with a similar idea.
Not a chance. I think we'd be using IPX, there'd be no TCP IP, we'd all be on Microsoft.online and it'd be all stuffed because the BSDs were in a shocking state and yeah, I can't honestly see it happening.
Well, if we'd not had Linux and the whole open source revolution, we probably wouldn't have had Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. It was pretty much Linux and open source that allowed that to happen, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm certain of it.
Yeah, because, well, my opinion is that the BSD's license didn't let people contribute in a way that they wanted to. Everybody liked the fact that if we put in work, you also have to put in work and nobody gets to own it. Nobody can take it away. And I think that was the biggest flaw of the BSDs.
But would that flaw not have inspired somebody to do something about it?
Yeah, it's so hard to know, isn't it?
Well, Web 2.0 would have been built on GNU Herd, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's what would have happened.
Look, why would we do that?
I tried to get that building and running once, didn't get very far.
I think I managed to get it working in a VM once and then just gave up. What would the desktop look like? Would there have been an open source desktop that was viable? Would there have been a Steam Deck?
Not a chance.
I remember what the world looked like. Do you remember Windows 95? Microsoft only just getting the idea of the internet. It was horrendous. Their own proprietary video formats and all that ASP stuff. Oh, that was Microsoft of the time. And I'm sure that they would have kept that kind of iron grip on everything that they were doing through what was the default interface for accessing the internet, what they were trying to make.
Given the meteoric rise of ARM, I'm reasonably certain that Acorn RISC OS would have taken over the world.
On the server side of things, would we not have just had a kind of duopoly situation where Windows Server was still really popular and the alternative was just big proprietary Unixes?
I think Windows would have eaten absolutely everything. I don't think there's anything it would have touched that it wouldn't have destroyed because that Microsoft back then was hell-bent on crushing everything. And I honestly can't see even the protocols that we use. They had their own protocols, for fuck's sake, like IPX and shit like that. That would have just been so pervasive. Like, they were bad enough as it is, and they missed the entirety of the internet existing. They were so shit at actually seeing that they completely missed it. And thank fuck they were, because we wouldn't have the internet we have today.
Yeah.
And it was only pure blind luck that we got as good a chance as that we did. And I think Linux was a massive part of that. Look at any PC now. Would you use a computer with no internet? No.
I mean, maybe it would, but as soon as a big corporation like that understands the potential there and has the resources to kind of own it, that becomes their main mission. That would have been their main mission. And we wouldn't have had anything, unless, as Will says, the BSDs got their shit together. We wouldn't have had anything at that time, at the time that it was all starting.
I do wonder if Will's right, though, that someone would have come up with it. Is it one of those things that it was just an idea that was obvious and needed to happen? Because Unix was so expensive, someone would have just made a clone of it and given it away for free, surely.
Yeah, maybe. But I think what maybe Phelim and I are feeling is that if it didn't happen when it did, if it happened 10 years later, for example, it would have been too late.
Another one then. What if Canonical hadn't given up on Unity? And by extension, I mean the phone and all of that. What if they were still working on Ubuntu phone? What if Unity 8, I think it was, had shipped? They hadn't gone back to GNOME. What would that look like?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer, because in order for all of those things to continue, there would have had to be, I think, an expansion in the workforce. I think it was running pretty lean when all those things were happening simultaneously. In order to get there, there would have been an enormous amount of work, and a lot of people would have had to work on it. And I can't imagine a world where Canonical had grown in that way, in a way which means that the phone would have had to be a commercial success, and the desktop probably would have had to be a profit center. And it's difficult for me to imagine how that business would have been. It would have been a very, very different company. And I can't really work out how it would have got there. So I'm struggling to imagine that world.
You're saying that it was inevitable. Shuttleworth had thrown enough good money after bad, and it just was not going to happen. You're saying that this couldn't have happened.
I'm saying I can't imagine how it could have happened. I think that the company was at the maximum size it could have been, running in the way that it was running, and I can't imagine a different setup that would have worked better. So yeah, I guess it's. I think it was inevitable. It was getting very thinly spread across a very wide area, and I don't think you can ever be successful if you're focusing on too many things. So I guess by extension, that means that in order for Unity 8 to be a success, all of the server side of things would have had to scale back, and that would have been a very different scenario now.
Graham's not allowed to comment on this, are you?
Oh, well, actually, the thing that I wanted to say is I feel like sometimes I live in an alternate timeline with this, because as I remember it at the time of Unity development, the community hated it. Nobody liked it. Everybody thought it was Canonical reinventing the wheel, or not in my backyard, or whatever it happens to be. So I can't see that was the overriding feeling. So if they hadn't given up on Unity, they would have just got a load more hate. I know that things have changed now, and there's a lot of good in Unity, but that's the thing that I most remember from that time. So would we have to change that as well to ask this question? What if Canonical hadn't given up on Unity and the community were behind it before they did?
I suppose the question is, what if that crowdfunder had worked for Ubuntu Edge, the smartphone they wanted to make? They wanted $32 million, and they only got $12.7 million, which was a lot of money.
I'll do it for $5.
I think that $32 million was a reasonable amount of money. You know, they needed a lot of developers. But if they'd had that injection of money specifically for the phone, then this wouldn't be a counterfactual now, would it? They would not have given up when they did. And that really was the beginning of the end for the phone project and Unity.
From just a purely an outsider look of interest, wouldn't it have been interesting to see GNOME and KDE being far behind Unity? Because realistically, Unity would have been the largest desktop of them all. I know a lot of people gave out about it, but a vast silent majority were using it, more so than the likes of GNOME at the time.
Oh yeah, millions of people were using it. And you're right, GNOME would be sort of where KDE is now, I would imagine. Maybe a bit ahead.
I think they've been a worse state, because I think KDE has just had its users all the time, had its funding model all the time the same, whereas GNOME would have been almost like a third desktop at that point, potentially.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale makes creating software-defined networks easy, securely connecting users, services, and devices. You can get set up in just a few minutes and then see everything in the web interface. I love how easy and clear it is to see all my devices and everything I need to know about their status. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. We haven't done Voice of the Masses for a while, so let's do it now. The question we asked on Mastodon was, what are you self-hosting and what are you relying on others to host for you? So let me put that to you lot first before we get into what people replied to us with.
I'm letting other people host all of my website, all of my mail server, basically anything that faces the internet is hosted for me, and all of the services that don't need access to the internet directly are self-hosted.
Right. You say that you're letting people host your website for you.
I just use GitHub Pages. I can push Markdown into a Jekyll site in GitHub Pages and it will build and deploy it for me to the web. I don't know how it does that, but they take care of all the infrastructure. So I've just got a GitHub repo and everything else is done for me.
Right. And then the self-hosted stuff is your home automation and your media and stuff like that then?
Yeah, exactly.
It's ESP32 Chinese botnet.
There are a number of those.
I've got a mixture as well. I do pay for a couple of VPSs and host my own crappy website on there. I use it for personal things, really. So this CentOS box, it's still running. I will say that for a long time, I had my own email running on there with postfix. So long that I could no longer remember what any of the postfix configuration did. So I did stop that last year, and I now pay for somebody to manage my email for me. But it's still my own email through my own domain, but basically it's Namecheap's email.
I used to have an XIM server, and in the end I just decided, no, this is too much.
XIM is too much, correct.
Actually, I have to say, I don't want to make it an advert for Namecheap, but their DNS modifying, even on the low tier, seems very flexible, and you can create domain forwarding and email forwarding even without any kind of email subscription. So I do that for the domains that I've got. And then on that old CentOS server, I've still got a few things like IRC and a few other things running on there, but I've got another more modern server that I use for experimenting with things on the internet. But at home, I self-host. Probably the most significant thing is Home Assistant, because that's like the center of everything that I do now. That's behind the firewall here on the LAN. And of course, there's Jellyfin and several music servers. If there's a Discovery, Larian server 3 has just been released, which is the modern version of LMS, and I use that for all of our music. So there's still a lot of stuff running here as well, which I suppose is self-hosted. But I think I've mentioned this before, I only have access to the home network through SSH. I don't have anything else opening or OpenVPN.
Well, that's all on a Wise 5070 then that you replaced a Pi with?
Yeah, it is. There are a couple of Raspberry Pis running a couple of different front ends in the house. Like I've got TV head end running on a Raspberry Pi next to the satellite receiver cable. And I've got another one in doing the brew Pi fridge in the garage. And so there are a couple of other things. I think there's another one somewhere else as well. And I like it. I would like to make things more self-hosted if I could, but I'm really limited by the network connection here, which is only like 15 megabits upstream.
You couldn't pay me enough money to host my own email ever again. No way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that battle is just lost, isn't it? Ultimately, if you want people to actually receive your emails, fail him to say, well, actually.
So, Fosstodon hosts my Mastodon. OVH has a physical server that they host for me, but I run everything on it. Yeah, that's all the external people host for me. My website, email, contacts, calendars, all that is all my own. It's a real hardware server, not a VPS. It's the lower tier stuff that OVH run from So You Start, it's called. Terrible name, but anyway. WireGuard for VPN stuff, all in between stuff. I don't use Tailscale or any of that. I used to have my own XMPP, but I stopped that when Telegram kind of became pretty good everywhere, and it was just easier to get other people on it. So that became the standard sort of chat thing. In the house, security cams are pies with the cameras and little motorized arm thingies. Cody does TV stuff. ADSB receiver is a pie in the house. Backups are local here that get shipped to my parents' house, then that gets shipped to my brother's house. Monitoring is all internal as well, like net data and various client stuff that I run from the work PC and things. Pretty much everything. Email too, yeah. It's awesome. I like it. It's good fun. There's nothing quite like your email getting blocked by a provider.
Yeah, it's fun when no one reads your emails, isn't it?
Funny thing is, though, very little of that happens to me. Very little. I think I did the right things for Google at the right time, which was a quad A record. I don't have DKIM set up, which I need to do. It's on my very, very long to-do list. But, I mean, I've had the same IP address for a long time. I don't send spam. I send very little mail. I use Civ records to kill pretty much anything that hits the box. I don't know. Maybe I've been lucky, but I've tried to be as clean as possible with my mail server IP so it doesn't get on any lists or anything like that. I mean, watch now as a bunch of lunatics put it onto one, but anyway.
Well, I rely on other people for most of my stuff, really. I mean, I've got various VPSs running web-facing stuff, but I try and host as little as I can, really, unless it's just on the LAN, like media stuff and whatnot. But yeah, I don't feel confident enough to put anything internet facing, I suppose. And VPN stuff, yeah, completely rely on Tailscale for that because it's just so easy. I know we're sponsored by them and everything, but it's just so easy to set up and, you know, I don't have to worry about ports and all that shit. Because I tried WireGuard and it just beat me because I'm just too thick.
Look, yeah, I know. It's definitely its own thing, but yeah, I don't find it hard. But I can see the beauty of the way Tailscale works, and that's not just because they're sponsored, but yeah, they put a nice interface on it, and that's good. That helps people use it, and I think as long as people are using a good VPN, like WireGuard VPN based, yes, that's a happy days for everybody involved.
Well, to get into the replies that we got, loads of people were hosting all sorts of stuff like Git and image, blogs, websites.
Good.
Monitoring, Nextcloud, Home Assistant, Plex and Jellyfin, RSS. I mean, Nextcloud was a huge one. So many people are running that.
Yeah, me too.
But email, as we've talked about, and particularly sending of email, very few people said they were hosting that. Almost everyone said they were relying on others. Interestingly, the Fediverse stuff seemed to be a bit of a mixture, with some people hosting their own instances, but a lot of other people are just relying on the likes of Fosterdon or the main server. Interestingly, with chat, some people are still hosting XMPP servers, but there was a lot of Signal, Matrix, and Telegram mentioned.
Oh, potential find for next time. There's a new-ish open source Oscar server, which will mean that AIM will work.
Oh my God.
And yeah, VPN's a mixture of people hosting WireGuard and other people saying Tailscale. Not much OpenVPN. You're proper old school, Graham, with that.
Oh, fuck a bunch of OP and VPN. At least it's not IPsec, though, because that can really go fuck itself.
Is that a case of you just spent so many hours learning it, Graham, that you stuck with it?
That's exactly it. Yep. It's set up on its word. I've actually tried to replace it with Wireshark, but I'm in a different country trying to access my Wireshark from a different country and it doesn't work. So OpenVPN just keeps working for me.
Oh, that'll be because you're trying to sniff packets instead of using a WireGuard VPN. Interestingly, offsite backups is something that I am doing myself, but most people seem to be paying someone for that.
Well, I would love to be able to use an offsite safe backup store. Like, I have clients that use the rsync one that Jim and Alan recommended, which I've forgotten the name of right now.
rsync.net, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. And it is excellent. It's very good, but bloody virgin and their shite upload. Do you know what I think a rule that should be made? When I'm universal dictator, you can only advertise the speed of an internet connection by the slowest side of it. So, make the either connection symmetric or make it bloody well good for upload, because it's just implausible to use it. And that's why SneakerNet is the only way to get my data around. And I can't see me turning up to the likes of Tarsnap or Arsync.net and saying, hello, I'd like to give you this hard drive. Could you stick that in your unit for me, please? I know there is probably services like that, but yeah, it's not going to happen.
Well, that's the beauty of ZFS. Like, I did all my replication locally on the LAN and then drove it over there and then just send incrementals every day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that initial backup can be a pain in the arse, yeah.
Unreal. I was too lazy one time to not do it with a new data set that I had. And yeah, it was a terrible, terrible mistake because it took about a week and a half to upload.
And presumably your internet was shit for that week while it was just completely maxing out your upload.
Oh, no. Netflix had a problem that week. I don't know what you're talking about. They lost all their high-def copies and they had to resort to AVI files.
What is your upload there then?
So I have 50 up and 500 down. The 1 gig down also had 50 up, so I told them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, too right.
All right.
Because to be quite honest, all I want is the up. If they had 100, I'd probably take that. Maybe not realistically, but yeah.
No, I had to live with 100 down for a bit, and it was really shit. I feel like I don't know, if 20 years ago me could hear that, it'd just be like, what, 100 down? But yeah, gigabit down and 100 up is what I've got now, which is, it's fine for doing incrementals. But yeah, I wouldn't want to do several terabytes up over that.
Nah. And the worst part is my brother, who now lives in the centre of the country in the arsehole of nowhere, had no electricity for a week, only got it back last night, had an internet connection put in that is, I think, 2 gigs down and close to 800 up. Wow. And I'm like, fuck off. I'm in the middle of the city and I've got fuck all internet.
But you got electricity, swings and roundabouts.
That is true, yeah.
And a toilet that's inside.
True.
So,
These are all true and valid points.
Notice that I stayed silent on the discussions about off-site backups. I think I'm paying for off-site backups in my future self, who will pay for it eventually.
You said before that you don't care. You want it all just gone.
Yeah.
He's very angry with you, though. I can see it now.
Maybe the world will end before I need them.
I set up a pretty simple upload to AWS S3. It was pretty easy to set up, and there's a tool called rclone that talks to S3 and does clever things. It's not very expensive, and it is very easy. So I think at the least, it's worth setting up something like that.
Or a Lux encrypted hard drive in the backseat pocket of a car.
Yeah.
Well, as usual, we've got loads of replies that are really interesting. So I'll put a link in the show notes to the thread, so have a look at it. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.